The music swelled, a soaring piece I had chosen with so much hope. I stood at the end of the petal-strewn aisle, a vision in ivory silk and lace, my father's arm a steady anchor. Across from me, beneath an arch of white roses, stood Leo. My Leo. Or so I thought. His smile was meant to be reassuring, but I saw the tension in his jaw, the way his eyes flickered towards the crowd instead of holding my gaze. I told myself it was just pre-wedding jitters. Everyone gets them. Even the CEO of a rising tech empire, even the man who had promised me forever. I took a step forward and that's when I heard it. Not the music but the insistent shrill buzz of his phone, set to override the "do not disturb" for only one person. His assistant, Cassandra. I saw his hand go to his pocket, a flicker of annoyance crossing his face. He silenced it. The ceremony continued. The officiant began to speak. But Leo's focus was shattered. His phone buzzed again, a persistent angry vibration against the quiet words of love and commitment. He pulled it out, his back slightly turning to me as he read the screen. His entire posture changed. The annoyance vanished, replaced by a sharp, urgent alarm. He looked up, his eyes wide, not at me but through me towards the exit. He leaned in, his whisper a harsh, frantic thing against my ear. "I'm so sorry, Maya. It's Cassandra. There's an emergency with the Kensington account. He's in trouble. I have to go." The world slowed to a crawl. "What? Leo, no. You can't. Not now." My voice was a thin, desperate thread. "I have to. She's alone with them. I'll be back as soon as I can. Just stall." He pressed a frantic kiss to my cheek, a parody of affection, and then he was gone. He literally ran down the aisle, his tuxedo jacket flapping, abandoning me, the guests, the entire spectacle. A collective horrified gasp sucked all the air out of the room. Hundreds of eyes turned to me, a mixture of pity, shock, and morbid curiosity. I stood frozen, a statue of humiliation in a wedding dress. My father's grip on my arm tightened, his face pale with fury and confusion. Then my phone vibrated in the delicate clutch my mother was holding for me. Then again. A numb curiosity propelled me. I took the phone. The first message was from Cassandra. Selfie. Her cheek pressed against Leo's in the front seat of his car. Her message was a knife to the heart. "See? All I have to do is call. So what if it's your wedding day? I'm still the only one he truly listens to." The second message was from Leo. "Cassandra's in a bad way. I need to get her settled. This wedding is just a formality for the merger anyway. You understand how these things are. Be patient." The cold, dismissive words blurred on the screen. A formality. A merger. My love, my future reduced to a business transaction. A red-hot wave of fury burned through the humiliation. I would not be his patient, understanding puppet. My gaze swept across the sea of stunned faces and landed on a man leaning against the back wall, arms crossed, his expression unreadable but his presence a solid, familiar comfort. Kieran. My oldest friend. The one who had told me a year ago that Leo was a narcissist who would never put me first. The one I'd stopped talking to for 6 months because of it. I walked to the officiant, my steps surprisingly steady, and took the microphone from his limp hand. The silence was absolute. I looked directly at Kieran. "Kieran," I said, my voice clear and strong, carrying to every corner of the room. "Will you marry me?" For a heartbeat, nothing moved. Then a slow, devastating smile spread across his face. He pushed off the wall and strode down the aisle, every step confident and sure. The crowd parted for him as if he were a king. He stopped before me, his eyes burning with an intensity that made my breath catch. "Yes, Maya. I will." He took the microphone. "Well, folks, seems the groom's position is vacant. I'm applying for the job. Anyone object?" The crowd, shocked into silence, could only stare. "Didn't think so. Padre, you know the words. Let's hear them." And so, I married Kieran Walker in front of God, my family, and Leo's fleeing back. The reception was a blur of champagne, shocked congratulations, and Kieran's solid, protective presence at my side. He handled the whispers and the awkward questions with a charm and wit that slowly diffused the tension. He was performing and he was magnificent. It was only hours later, as the adrenaline faded, that I checked my phone again and saw another message from Leo, sent just after he'd fled. One word: postponed. I had spent 6 months planning this day. He thought he could cancel it with a single cavalier word. I felt a wave of exhaustion so profound it made my bones ache. A warm weight rested on my shoulder. Kieran stood behind me, encircling me in his arms. "You're exhausted, Maya," he murmured into my hair. "Let's get you to a hotel. You can crash there tonight." "A hotel?" I asked, leaning back against him. "I have a home. A home full of Leo's things, his presence, his betrayal." Kieran's body went rigid. "We had a ceremony. A beautiful, brilliant, glorious ceremony. But we're not legally married yet. I'm not taking you back to his place and you're not coming to mine. Not tonight. It's not right." I turned in his arms, surprised by his old-fashioned chivalry. The man who had just orchestrated a wedding coup was blushing. A faint pink crept from his neck to the tips of his ears. I found it incredibly endearing. I reached up and gently touched his hot ear. He flinched away as if electrocuted. Don't. I'll take you to the hotel." The car ride was quiet, filled with a new, strange tension. At the entrance to the luxurious hotel, he became a flustered mess again. "I'm not coming up. You need to rest. Alone. I'll call you tomorrow." A mischievous impulse took hold. I hooked my pinky finger with his and gently stroked his palm. "You get some rest too, Kieran." His face flushed scarlet. He muttered a goodbye, jumped into his car and practically sped away from the curb. I finally smiled for the first time since Leo had left. The world was insane, but Kieran was a constant, wonderful mystery. The smile froze on my lips the moment I stepped out of the elevator onto my floor. Because there, standing outside a room down the hall, were Leo and Cassandra. Cassandra was draped over Leo like an expensive, limp stole. Her dress was rumpled, her hair a mess, and she was clinging to his arm with a possessiveness that made my skin crawl. Leo was supporting her, his expression one of strained concern. Then he looked up and saw me. His first reaction wasn't guilt or shock or even apology. It was annoyance. His brows drew together in a familiar frown. "Maya? What are you doing here?" The sheer audacity of the question left me speechless. He was the one who had fled our wedding. He was the one in a hotel corridor with his assistant, whose previously pristine tuxedo shirt was now missing its tie, the top buttons undone. Even from a distance I could see the faint, damning purple marks on his neck. I decided to simply ignore him and walk to my room. I had the key card in my hand. I just had to get past them. As I drew level, his hand shot out and grabbed my wrist, his grip tight and painful. "I asked you a question. Why aren't you at home? What are you doing at a hotel?" I stared at his furious, possessive expression. For a dizzying second, I almost believed he was genuinely worried about me. Then the pain in my wrist cleared my head. I wrenched my arm free. "What I do is none of your business, Leo. Not anymore." "None of my business?" he hissed, his voice low and venomous. "I'm your fiancé. Of course it's my business." I let out a bitter laugh that echoed in the plush hallway. "My fiancé? Is that what you are? My fiancé who was just holding another woman? My fiancé who abandoned me at our wedding because of her? My fiancé who shows up at a hotel covered in her lipstick?" My voice was rising, but I didn't care. Leo had the gall to look patient, as if he were dealing with a hysterical child. He tried to adopt a coaxing tone. "Maya, be reasonable. I explained it in my text. Cassandra was in over her head with the Kensington clients. They were forcing her to drink. I was worried about her safety. I went to extract her. I said I'd be back." "You said you'd be back soon," I spat back. "I've heard people say that to their dogs before a walk, Leo. I've never heard it applied to a wedding ceremony. What did you think this was? A meeting you could just reschedule?" The full force of his betrayal hit me then, and I began to tremble with a rage so pure it was terrifying. "Get lost, Leo. Just get the hell out of my sight." His mask of patience shattered. His face darkened, his lips thinning into a cruel line. "I'm only going to say this once, Maya. Stop this ridiculous tantrum and come home with me." "No. Cassandra is sick, she has a splitting headache and I need to get back to make her a remedy." The air left my lungs. He didn't want me to come home to reconcile. He wanted to drag me home so he wouldn't be inconvenienced, so he could then tend to her. I was an obstacle to his care of Cassandra. I was so choked with fury I couldn't speak. I just glared at him, my eyes promising murder. It was then that Cassandra, who had been playing the part of a semi-conscious invalid, decided to speak. Her voice was a weak, simpering thing. "Miss Maya, What are you doing here? They kept asking me that. As if I were the one out of place. Mr. Leo, don't be so harsh, she slurred, a sly look in her eyes that only I could see. Maybe Maya has her own business here. She let the word hang in the air, heavy with implication. Leo's eyes narrowed. He looked from my angry face to the key card in my hand. Business? What business? Who are you here with? Before I could even form a denial, his hand snapped out and snatched the key card from my grasp. I lunged for it, but he was fueled by a jealous rage. He shoved me away hard. I stumbled back and my lower back connected with the sharp brass knob of a service door. A blinding white-hot pain shot through me. I cried out, slumping against the door as I clutched my side, seeing stars. Leo didn't seem to notice. He was too busy fumbling with the key card. The lock clicked green. He shoved the door open, grabbed my arm again and hauled me, stumbling and in agony, into the room. Where is he? He roared, his voice echoing in the suite. He dragged me through the sitting area and into the bedroom, throwing open the bathroom door. Where's your lover? Hiding in the shower? Bring him out. There's no one. I gasped, the pain in my back making me nauseous. I'm alone, you lunatic. He finally seemed to register that the room was indeed empty. His frantic search ended. He turned on me, his chest heaving. He pushed me down onto the sofa and caged me in with his arms, his face inches from mine. His eyes were black with fury. Listen to me, Maya, he whispered, his voice terrifyingly calm. If I ever find out you've been unfaithful to me, you will regret it for the rest of your life. Do you understand me? Tears of pain and anger welled in my eyes, but my pride refused to let them fall. I met his gaze head-on. Is that a promise, Leo? I'll be waiting. We had fought before, and in the past seeing my tears would usually soften him even in his worst moods. But not this time. This time his grip on my chin tightened. He leaned so close his lips brushed my ear. Think about the paintings, Maya, he whispered, the words cold and precise. Think very carefully. Then he released me as if I were contaminated. He straightened his shirt, walked out of the suite and pulled a smirking Cassandra into his arms. The door slammed shut behind them. I slid from the sofa onto the floor, the dam finally breaking. Sobs racked my body as Leo's threat echoed in my head. The paintings. Our paintings. Leo was a tech CEO now, but his first love, his degree, was in digital art. When I met him, he was a brilliant but struggling artist. I was a business student who had just had a massive fight with my family and was living on a shoestring budget. To make money, I took a one-time job as a figure model for an art class. My client was Leo. The session was professional, silent. But afterward, I heard the sound of frustration from his booth. Curious, I peeked and saw him about to delete a stunning piece of digital art over a minor proportional error. I stopped him. I had a good eye for detail and composition, a skill honed from a childhood surrounded by art. I showed him how to fix it. That painting won him a prestigious award. He took me to dinner to thank me. We fell in love. And during our years together, I was his muse, his critic, his biggest supporter. In moments of passion, we had created private art. Intimate digital portraits and scenes that were beautiful, erotic, and utterly damning. They were proofs of our love. And now they were his weapons to ensure my compliance. I cried on the floor until I had no tears left. I cried for the love I thought was real, for the future that was ash, and for the terrifying hold he still had over me. I didn't sleep. When a knock came at the door hours later, I was still on the floor, wrapped in a blanket from the bed. It was Kieran. He took in my puffy eyes, my pale face, the way I held my sore back. His own face was shadowed with concern and a dark anger he quickly suppressed. He didn't ask what happened. He just helped me to my feet. Come on. Let's get some air. We drove in silence. I was lost in my fears and he seemed to be wrestling with his own demons. I assumed we were heading to the city clerk's office. Yesterday he'd been so eager. But the car passed the turn for Government Plaza. Kieran, the marriage license office is back there. He gripped the steering wheel, his knuckles white. Change of plan, he said, his voice tight. We're going to get your wedding dress first. And we're going to take proper photos. I was too emotionally and physically exhausted to argue. The thought of confronting the legalities of our impulsive marriage was suddenly overwhelming. A photo shoot sounded like a welcome distraction. He pulled up to the most exclusive bridal boutique in the city. I let him help me out of the car, my body still aching. You go on in, he said. I'll park and be right there. I pushed open the heavy glass door, the scent of expensive perfume and new fabric washing over me. And then I stopped dead. Because there, under the dazzling lights of the main platform, was Cassandra. She was wearing a breathtaking, pristine white wedding dress, spinning slowly with a radiant smile on her face. And standing opposite her, wearing a perfectly tailored tuxedo, was Leo. Well, Leo. Cassandra's voice was a sickly sweet melody that grated on my every nerve. How do I look? Leo, my former fiancé, the man who had threatened me mere hours ago, looked at her with an admiration I recognized. It was the look he'd given me when I'd worn my wedding dress for the first fitting. He took her hand, bent down, and pressed a light kiss to her knuckles. Beautiful, he said, and the word felt like a physical blow. I stood frozen just inside the door, a ghost at my own funeral. They hadn't seen me. Cassandra preened, walking over to Nestle against his side, a picture of possessive bliss. Let's take this one then. We can go do the photo shoot now. My heart hammered against my ribs. Oh, he was going to do a wedding photo shoot with her now? After everything? Leo didn't move. For a wild second I thought maybe, just maybe, a shred of decency remained. But then he spoke, his voice low and intimate. Cassandra, you have to be patient. Just wait a little longer for me. Tears, seemingly on command, welled in Cassandra's eyes and traced paths through her carefully applied makeup. Wait. Leo, I've been waiting. How long must I wait? Do you know how much it hurt me yesterday seeing you stand up there with her? They embraced, a tight, desperate clutch that spoke of a long hidden history. I felt the blood drain from my face, leaving me cold and numb. Then Leo raised his hand as if taking a vow. I swear to you, Cassandra, the moment my position is unshakable, the moment the merger is solid, I will marry you. You know that. Marrying Maya is just a necessary step. A business arrangement. Everyone knows she's my fiancé. My reputation, my credibility right now, it's tied to her. I still need her. The words landed, each one a precise, brutal strike. A necessary step. A business arrangement. I need her. Everyone knew he was engaged to me because I had made everyone know. I had believed in him when he was a nobody. I'd used my own business acumen, skills I'd tried so hard to reject from my family, to help him build his company from the ground up. I'd networked, I'd schmoozed investors, I'd managed his brand. His success was our success. Or so I'd thought. It had been my identity. And he had reduced it to a calculated business strategy. Cassandra looked up at him, her expression a masterpiece of manipulative devotion. I know, Leo. I know it's me you love. It's always been me. Since we were in college. College. They had known each other since college. Long before me. You're the only woman who has ever been in my heart, Leo vowed, his voice thick with emotion. He began unbuttoning his shirt right there in the boutique. See? I even have your birthday right over my heart. You have to believe me. He pulled the fabric aside. There on his chest was a tattoo I knew well. A stylized single-winged raven in flight, with 4 numbers beneath it. 1019. I had asked him about it 1,000 times. Why only one wing? What does the number mean? It's art, Maya, he'd said, brushing me off with a kiss. The beauty of asymmetry. The numbers. It's the day I realized I was falling for you. I had believed him. I, the hopeless romantic, had even gone and gotten a tattoo of a moon on my hip a week later. Because ravens were creatures of the moon. It was our secret, poetic connection. It was all a lie. The numbers were her birthday. The raven was for her. I had permanently marked my body for a love story that never existed. I was so lost in the devastating truth that I didn't hear Kieran come in. See something interesting, Maya? His voice, sharp and concerned, cut through my stupor. It also caught the attention of Leo and Cassandra. Leo's head snapped up. The moment he saw me, a flash of pure panic crossed his face before it was quickly buried under a wave of irritation and possessiveness. Maya? He said, striding forward, ignoring a smug-looking Cassandra. Did you follow me here? I told you to go home. Are you stalking me now? I could only stare, my mind still reeling from the tattoo, from the confession I'd just overheard. When I didn't answer, his face darkened. I asked you a question. When are you going to stop this nonsense and come home? He reached for my arm, but Kieran was suddenly there, a solid wall between us. He didn't shove Leo, just placed a firm, blocking hand on his chest. I'd appreciate it if you didn't manhandle my wife, Kieran said, his voice deceptively calm. You're what? Leo spat the word like it was poison. He looked at me, a condescending smirk on his face. Maya, this has gone far enough. You don't need to hire some actor to try and make me jealous. It's pathetic. Cassandra chose that moment to play peacemaker. Mr. Leo, don't be angry. I'm sure Ms. Maya is just feeling insecure. She took a step forward, then dramatically tripped on the hem of the massive wedding dress, tumbling directly into Leo's waiting arms. Oh, my ankle. It was so theatrical I almost laughed. Instead, the disgust I felt finally broke through my shock. You're both disgusting, I said, my voice low and steady. I turned to leave to pull Kieran away from this circus, but Leo's voice stopped me. Wait. I'm not done with you. His eyes flicked to Kieran and a nasty suspicion dawned on his face. Is this him? Is this the guy you were with at the hotel last night? His accusation was so vile, so hypocritical, that it snapped the last of my restraint. I turned to face him fully. Have you lost your mind, Leo? What right do you have to question me? The moment you ran away from our wedding, you forfeited any right to my life. He laughed, a harsh, ugly sound. Break up? Did I agree to a breakup? We're not done until I say we're done. He moved to grab me again, and this time Kieran didn't hold back. As Leo's hand touched my arm, Kieran's moved like lightning. He grabbed Leo's wrist, twisted it expertly, and used his own momentum to spin him around and shove him back a step, all in one fluid motion. I warned you, Kieran said, his voice dropping to a dangerous growl. Keep your hands off my wife. Who the hell is your wife? Leo snarled, rubbing his wrist. A slow, wicked grin spread across Kieran's face. He pulled out his phone, unlocked it, and shoved the screen in Leo's face. It was the wallpaper, a photo from our wedding ceremony yesterday. Kieran and I standing at the altar looking at each other. It was a candid shot, and the look on my face, one of stunned, relieved happiness, was undeniable. "Pie wife," Kieran said proudly. "Stunning, isn't she?" He glanced back at me, his eyes sparkling with a challenge. "So, honey, when are we heading to the courthouse to make it official?" "Today." Seeing an opportunity to drive the knife in, I played along. "Why wait?" I said, patting the pocket of my dress. "I've got my ID right here. Let's go now." Kieran's smirk turned into a genuine, surprised laugh. He let out a low, approving whistle. Leo stared, his eyes darting between the photo on the phone and my determined face. The reality of what we had done, what I had done, finally began to dawn on him. His expression shifted from anger to disbelief, then to a kind of dawning horror. "Maya," he said, his voice losing its bluster. You can't be serious. Who gave you permission to do this?" I looked him dead in the eye, the pieces of my shattered heart crystallizing into something cold and sharp. "I don't need your permission, Leo. You made your choice. Now I've made mine. It's a simple concept. Everyone ends up with their first love eventually. You have yours." I gestured to Cassandra, who was watching with wide, furious eyes. "And it seems I have mine." I enjoyed the stunned confusion that flashed across both their faces. I turned on my heel and walked out, the bells on the boutique door chiming my exit. As I passed Cassandra, I gave her and the dress a slow, critical once-over. "If he really loved you," I said quietly so only she could hear, "he wouldn't let you wear a high-neck gown. It overwhelms your frame. Makes you look stout. If you're going to commit to this farce, at least insist on a style that flatters you." Her mouth dropped open in outrage. I didn't wait for a response. Kieran caught up to me on the sidewalk, his eyes wide with a mixture of awe and burning curiosity. "What did you mean by that? Everyone ends up with their first love? What does that mean?" At the same time, Leo burst out of the boutique behind us, his face a mask of fury. He wasn't looking at me anymore. He was looking at Kieran with a dawning, terrible recognition. "You," he shouted, pointing a shaking finger. "I know you, Walker. You're—" But his accusation was cut short as Kieran smoothly ushered me into his car. As we drove away, I saw Leo pull out his phone, his expression frantic. He was typing furiously. My own phone buzzed. A message from Leo. "Get ready to see your precious paintings splashed across every screen in the city." I closed my eyes, the brief high of my victory instantly crushed by the cold weight of his threat. The paintings. He was really going to do it. I had to get to them first. The euphoria of confronting Leo evaporated, replaced by a cold, sharp dread that sat in my stomach like a stone. The paintings. He wasn't bluffing. The Leo the first knew or thought I knew was possessive, arrogant, and cruel when cornered. Destroying my reputation to maintain his control was exactly something he would do. Kieran was silent beside me, his hands tight on the steering wheel. He'd seen the message. He didn't ask what it meant. He just drove, his jaw set in a hard line. He's going to ruin me, I whispered, more to myself than to him. No, he's not, Kieran said, his voice low and certain. He didn't look at me. He's not going to touch you. You don't understand, Kieran. Has things. Private things. Digital files. He'll release them. Why? His voice was calm, cutting through my panic. Take a deep breath. Look at me. I did. His gaze was steady, intense. Do you trust me? The question was absurd. I'd married him on a whim yesterday. I'd known him my whole life, yet the last few years had created a chasm between us. But looking into his eyes now, seeing the unwavering certainty there, I found my answer. Yes, I said. I trust you. A faint, grim smile touched his lips. Good. Then let's go make it official. He didn't drive to Leo's company. He didn't drive to my apartment. He drove straight to the city clerk's office. I was too numb to question it. My mind was a frantic loop of worst-case scenarios. The intimate, artistic portraits Leo had painted of me, displayed on news sites, shared across social media, dissected by strangers. The process at the clerk's office was a blur. Signing forms, standing for a photo, a board official stamping papers. Kieran handled everything. His hand was warm and steady on the small of my back, guiding me through the steps. When the clerk finally handed us 2 embossed certificates, Kieran took them, his hand trembling slightly. He looked down at the paper, then at me. The grim determination on his face melted away, replaced by a look of such pure, unadulterated wonder that it made my breath catch. Why? He said, his voice hushed. He pulled me into a fierce, crushing hug, lifting me off my feet right there in the government hallway. You're my wife. You're really my wife. He said it with so much reverence, so much joy that a real smile, the first genuine one in days, broke through my anxiety. For a moment, just a moment, Leo's threat faded into the background. The moment was shattered by my phone. News alerts. A dozen of them. I fumbled for it, my heart plummeting. This was it. He'd done it. But the headlines weren't about me. Breaking. Fire at Lumina Tech HQ. Electrical fault suspected in blaze at downtown tech firm. Artiso Leo Vasallo's studio feared total loss. No injuries reported. I stared at the screen, my mind refusing to process the words. A fire. At his office. His studio. I looked up at Kieran, my eyes wide. He was looking at my phone, a neutral expression on his face. His studio. I stammered. The servers. The backups. Electrical faults are terrible things, Kieran said mildly, taking my hand and leading me back to the car. So unpredictable. Especially in older buildings that have been hastily renovated to accommodate rapid growth. Good thing no one was hurt. The way he said it. The calm certainty. The lack of surprise. Do you trust me? A cold understanding washed over me, followed immediately by a wave of immense, staggering relief. Kieran hadn't just driven us to the courthouse to get married. He'd driven us here to give us both an alibi. I didn't ask. He didn't explain. We just got in the car. As he started the engine, he finally looked at me, a flicker of worry in his eyes. Are you okay? I took a deep, shuddering breath. The weight was gone. The threat was ash. Yes. I'm okay. A brilliant, relieved grin spread across his face. Good. Now, wife, he said, the word sounding like a delicious secret on his tongue. Where to? I believe we have some celebrating to do. The next few days were a strange, peaceful bubble. We didn't talk about Leo or the fire. We didn't talk about the past. Kieran, it turned out, was relentless in his cheerfulness. He dragged me out to fancy dinners, to movies, on long walks through the park. He was like a golden retriever in human form, constantly seeking my attention, making me laugh, determined to pull me out of my gloom. And he was constantly pestering me about one thing. Come on, Maya, he'd whine, draping himself over the back of the sofa where I was trying to read. What did you mean? Everyone ends up with their first love? Explain it to me. I'm your husband. I have a right to know. He was 6 feet 2 inches of pure, persistent charm. It was impossible to stay sad around him. I'd just smile and evade him. It's not important. It is to me, he'd pout. My heart aches with curiosity. I'm suffering. I might need medical attention. I'd laugh and push him away, but a part of me held back. The memory of my teenage heartbreak was still surprisingly raw. Of course, Leo didn't vanish. He called me once. His voice was a ragged mess of fury and suspicion. You did this, he accused. You burned my studio down. You destroyed my work. I have no idea what you're talking about, Leo, I said calmly, watching Kieran make pancakes in the kitchen of his luxurious apartment. The news said it was an electrical fault. Tragedy. Thank God no one was hurt. All those important files, gone. It's just such a shame. I could practically hear him grinding his teeth through the phone. He had no proof. Nothing. He hung up on me. The fallout was swift and public. Without the portfolio of work stored in that studio, the very work I had helped him create and curate, his reputation took a nosedive. The promised merger that was so important to him evaporated. Investors pulled out. Then the final nail in the coffin. A public statement was issued by a renowned reclusive tech innovator and investor, Arthur Blackwood. The statement was simple. Mr. Blackwood clarified that he had met with Mr. Vassallo on a few occasions as a personal favor, but had never taken him on as a protégé, contrary to widespread claims. He wished Mr. Vassallo well in his future endeavors. The industry read between the lines immediately. Leo had been leveraging Blackwood's name for years to gain credibility. With that endorsement yanked away, he was exposed as a fraud. His company crumbled overnight. I read the news with a detached sense of justice. Kieran, sprawled on the rug at my feet, looked up from his tablet. You know, he said casually, Uncle Arthur never liked him. I froze. Uncle Arthur? Arthur Blackwood is your uncle? Kieran blinked as if just realizing what he'd said. Oh. Yeah. Mom's brother. Didn't I mention that? The pieces began to click into place. The ease with which Kieran moved in this world of wealth and influence. The powerful friends. The favor Arthur Blackwood had done for Leo. It hadn't been for Leo at all. It had been for me. I was about to demand the whole story when Kieran sat up, his expression turning serious. Maya, he said, taking my hands. I want to take you home. My heart stuttered. Home? To my apartment? I can't, Kieran, his things are still. No, he interrupted gently. Home. To Fairhaven. To your parents. You've been away for years. They miss you. I miss them for you. It's time. The thought sent a bolt of anxiety through me. My fight with my family had been epic. I'd left for the city to escape their world, their expectations, their constant, smothering control. I'd chosen a struggling artist over the future they'd meticulously planned for me. And I'd been too proud and too ashamed to admit they might have been right. Seeing the fear on my face, Kieran squeezed my hands. Don't be angry with them anymore. Please. It's not just because of them, is it? He was right. It wasn't. My pride had kept me away as much as their disapproval. I took a deep breath. Okay, I whispered. Let's go home. The next afternoon, we drove through the familiar, towering gates of my family's estate in Fairhaven. My parents were waiting on the steps of the sprawling colonial house. The moment my mother saw me, her hand flew to her mouth, her eyes filling with tears. My father's stern expression crumpled into one of profound relief. There were no recriminations. No I told you so's. Just tearful hugs and a flood of questions. Over a family dinner that felt both wonderfully familiar and strangely new, I told them everything. About Leo. About the wedding. About Kieran. My mother held my hand, her tears falling freely. My father listened, his face growing grimmer with each detail until I mentioned Kieran. Then he looked at the man sitting beside me, who had been quietly holding my other hand under the table. Kieran, my father said, his voice thick with emotion. You're a good man. You've always been a good man. We're so glad she has you. He looked back at me. We're so glad you both found your way back to each other. Later that evening, the house was filled with the noise of a welcome home party. Friends, family, all the people I'd grown up with. Kieran was in his element, laughing, telling stories, seamlessly fitting back into the world I'd tried so hard to escape. Watching him, an old, painful memory surfaced. I tugged on his sleeve as he passed by with a tray of drinks. Kieran, I said, my voice barely audible over the music. That day, you told your friends you only saw me as a sister. That you could never see me that way. He froze, the tray halting in midair. His smile vanished. He slowly set the tray down and turned to me, his expression unreadable. What? He asked, his voice low. Before I could repeat myself, a harsh, familiar voice cut through the celebratory noise. Maya? What are you doing here? I turned. Pushing his way through the crowd, his face a mask of confusion and anger, was Leo. A flustered-looking Cassandra was trailing behind him. The joyous noise of the party seemed to hit a wall and die. Every head turned towards the interruption. Leo stood there in the middle of my family's living room, looking wildly out of place. His clothes were rumpled, his hair disheveled, a far cry from the polished CEO he'd always presented himself as. Cassandra hovered behind him, her eyes wide as she took in the obvious wealth of the surroundings. The original art on the walls, the antique furniture, the casually dressed guests who exuded old money confidence. Leo's gaze locked onto me, ignoring everyone else. I've been calling you. Why didn't you answer? How long are you going to keep this ridiculous charade up? He sounded genuinely bewildered, as if he'd stumbled into an alternate universe where his actions had no consequences. I just stared at him, a cold amusement settling in my bones. He truly didn't get it. Kieran stepped smoothly in front of me, his posture shifting from relaxed host to protective barrier. You have a real knack for showing up where you're not wanted, Vassallo. Got a thing for harassing other men's wives. He took my left hand, lifting it to deliberately show off the simple platinum band on my finger next to the more ornate engagement ring Leo had given me. Leo's eyes flicked to the rings and a condescending scoff escaped him. So what? You got a piece of paper? That doesn't mean anything. She's just throwing a tantrum. She'll come to her senses. He said it with a shaky bravado, but I could see the shiftiness in his eyes. He was trying to convince himself more than anyone else. Kieran looked at him with something akin to pity. The level of self-delusion is actually impressive. It was Cassandra who spoke next, her voice a nervous chirp as she tried to play the peacemaker. Mr. Leo, I'm sure there's just been a misunderstanding. Ms. Maya, it's such a lovely home. Did your friend bring you here? She gestured vaguely at Kieran, her implication clear. She thought Kieran was just my wealthy new fling, my way of rebounding in style. Leo seized on the idea, his eyes lighting up with a nasty suspicion. He pointed a finger at Kieran. Is that it? Is he why you've changed? You're just a gold digger after all? You traded up for a better bank account. A laugh burst out of me, sharp and incredulous. It broke the tense silence of the room. My uncle, a distinguished-looking man with a head of silver hair, detached himself from a conversation nearby and walked over, a crystal glass of whiskey in his hand. He completely ignored Leo and Cassandra, beaming at Kieran and me. Why, Kieran. So glad you're finally home. Your father and I have been waiting years for this good news. He clapped Kieran on the shoulder warmly. Leo's jaw dropped. He recognized my uncle. Everyone in the tech and art world knew Arthur Blackwood. Leo had spent years name-dropping him, claiming a mentorship that never existed. Mr. Blackwood? Leo stammered, his confidence evaporating. You're here? What is this place? Arthur finally deigned to glance at him, his expression turning cold and dismissive. I'm here for my niece's homecoming. And to celebrate her marriage. He turned his back on Leo, effectively dismissing him from existence. Now, Maya, you must tell me all about your plans. Will you be taking a more active role in the family ventures now? Leo looked like he'd been struck. His eyes darted from Arthur's familiar face to my parents, to the obvious luxury of the house and finally to me. The pieces were crashing together in his head, forming a picture he never could have imagined. You're just a gold digger after all? The irony was so thick it was almost funny. Just then a server glided by with a tray of champagne flutes. Kieran, with a theatrical flourish that was pure, unadulterated smugness, stopped him. Excuse me, my good man, Kieran said, his voice loud enough to carry. Could you please get my wife a drink with a lower alcohol content? We're celebrating. The server, who wore the discreet insignia of my family's private staff, nodded respectfully. Of course, young master. Right away. Young master. The term hung in the air. Leo looked like he was about to be sick. Cassandra had gone pale. Young master. Leo whispered, his voice cracking. This is your? Kieran grinned, enjoying the show immensely. Yeah. What? You got a problem with that? I pinched his side, but I was smiling too. His obnoxiousness was perfectly timed. How is this possible? Leo shook his head, refusing to believe the evidence in front of him. You told me your parents were farmers. I gestured out the large bay window to the extensive manicured gardens where, in a dedicated plot, my mother grew heirloom tomatoes and my father tended to his prized rose bushes. They are, I said mildly. Quite passionate about it. Then, all those corporate contracts, the investors. The horror in his eyes was complete. That was you. All along. I nodded. They were contacts from my world, Leo. People who knew my family, who knew me. Mr. Blackwood. I smiled sweetly at my uncle. He didn't see promise in your work. He saw me standing behind you. Arthur gave a dry chuckle. You thought those derivative algorithms of yours were what caught my eye? Don't be ridiculous. You had no original vision and the work ethic of a spoiled child. You were a project my niece was passionate about. Nothing more. The final vestiges of Leo's pride shattered. He stood there, exposed and humiliated, in the home of the woman whose influence and wealth he'd taken credit for, whose love he'd treated as a business strategy. My parents finished their greetings and called us to the main terrace for a toast. As Kieran and I brushed past the frozen Leo, I decided to give him one last definitive truth. Leo, I don't need to marry for money or status, I said, my voice quiet but clear. I was born into it. I am it. Scarlet, ever his defender even now, found her voice. Maya, what are you boasting about? You moved on in a heartbeat. You think that makes you better than us? I looked at her with genuine pity. I moved on because I had somewhere and someone to move on to. Something you'll never have with him. A placeholder will always be a placeholder. I left them standing there, two ghosts in the bright, lively room, and walked hand in hand with Kieran onto the terrace. Behind us, large screens lit up, displaying our wedding photo, the one from the altar yesterday. It was tacky and over the top, and Kieran had insisted on it. We gave our speeches, thanking everyone for coming. As we neared the end, a commotion erupted from the living room. Leo burst through the doors onto the terrace, his face a mess of desperate tears. Maya, I was wrong. I see that now. He tried to rush the stage, but two security guards materialized and held him back. I can change. We had something real. We built a life together. You can't just throw that all away. He was crying, but it was the crying of a man who had lost his meal ticket, not his soulmate. It was hypocrisy perfected. I looked down at him with pure disgust. I waved a hand at the guards. Please remove him. And let it be known, I said, raising my voice so every guest, every business associate could hear, that the family will have no further dealings with Leo Vassallo or his company. It was a social and professional death sentence. The crowd murmured, absorbing the decree. The party eventually ended. As Kieran and I were leaving, we found Leo still loitering by the gates, waiting like a lost puppy. Maya, please, he begged, grabbing for my hand. I snatched it away. You are a craven, opportunistic snake, I said, my voice cold and flat. Where was this devotion when you left me at the altar? When you were fucking your assistant in hotel rooms? Don't talk about the life we built. You're a squatter in my home and you're disgusting. I saw the truth of every word hit him like a physical blow. He recoiled. And yes, I added, driving the final nail home. We were together for years. But those years are a footnote compared to a lifetime with Kieran. Did you ever really wonder why I chose you, a struggling artist with nothing, in the first place? His eyes were wide with dawning horror. He didn't want to hear the answer. It was because you were the antithesis of this, I said, gesturing to the estate, the wealth, the expectation. You were my rebellion. A way to spit in the eye of the world I came from. It was never about you. It was always about me. The last bit of light left his eyes. He understood now. He had been a tool, a prop in my story of defiance. And now the story was over. As our car pulled away, I saw Cassandra run up to him. I rolled down the window just enough to call out to her. Better work hard to keep your place, Cassandra. It must be exhausting. After all, I said, my smile sharp and cruel, there won't be another me after I'm gone, will there? It was an ugly thing to say, but it was less than a fraction of the humiliation he'd inflicted on me. Kieran squeezed my hand not in judgment but in solidarity. We held a second wedding in Fairhaven a month later. This one was entirely Kieran's doing. He planned every detail from the flowers to the music. He even hand-calligraphed every invitation. The night before I was a nervous wreck. I texted him. "Can't sleep. Come over?" His reply was instant and firm. "Absolutely not. Tradition. Can't see the bride. I'll see you at the altar." It was so endearingly serious. My family, it turned out, adored him and took the traditions as seriously as he did. His 80-year-old grandfather insisted on vetting our vows. The ceremony was perfect. Our wedding video played on a loop on the local community channel for 3 days. I found it mortifying, but Kieran was insistent. "I want everyone to know," he said, his eyes earnest. "I want the whole world to know I waited for you and I finally won." In the quiet moments after, as we looked at the wedding photos, I finally gathered the courage. "You were the one who rejected me," I mumbled, avoiding his gaze. "But now you act like you've been pining for decades." He heard me. His head snapped up. What do you mean?" And so began his new relentless campaign. He pestered me constantly. He followed me around our new apartment. "Tell me. You have to tell me. What did you mean?" It came to a head during a routine medical checkup. We were starting to think about a family. In the middle of the doctor's office, as the physician asked if I had any pains, Kieran clutched his chest dramatically. "Doc, my heart," he groaned, flopping back on the examination table. "It aches. Cracking. I think it's a mystery. My wife is keeping a secret from me." I burst out laughing and the doctor looked utterly bewildered. I covered Kieran's mouth, my face red. "Okay, I'll tell you. Later." His little performance had worked. He was beaming as we left the office, finally victorious. We were heading to the reproductive health department to pick up some information when our path took us past the family clinic. And there they were. Leo and Cassandra. She was sobbing, her face streaked with tears, clutching her stomach. "Leo, please. Not this one. He's our baby. He's already over a month old." The timeline was like a punch to the gut. Over a month. Conceived around the time of our abandoned wedding. Leo's face was a stone. "No. This can't happen. Maya will never take me back if she finds out. You have to get rid of it." "I can't." Cassandra wailed, her voice raw with despair. "The doctor said another procedure. I might never be able to have children again. Leo, I'm begging you. This is our third baby. Don't make me do this again." "Third." The word echoed in the sterile hallway. This wasn't a recent affair. This was a long-term, hidden life. They had ended 2 other pregnancies. The sheer scale of the betrayal, the cold, repeated cruelty of it, ignited a fury in me so intense I saw red. I had been going to walk away to spare myself the drama. But I couldn't. I couldn't let him do this to her again. I strode forward, yanked Cassandra's hand away from Leo's arm and got right in his face. "You are the most disgusting man I have ever known," I seethed, my voice low and shaking with rage. He looked startled, then hopeful. "Why, I don't." I cut him off. "There is no us. There never will be. And it's not just because of her." I gestured to the weeping Cassandra. "It's because you are a weak, pathetic, and fundamentally worthless human being. How can you call yourself a man? She is carrying your child for the 3rd time and all you can think about is yourself? Are you even human?" My voice had risen, drawing stares from nurses and patients. Leo shrunk under the scrutiny, his face flushing with humiliation. I turned to Cassandra, who was staring at me in shock. "And you? Where is your spine? If you're going to be the other woman, have some self-respect. Fight for yourself. Fight for your child. Or is being his doormat really all you're worth?" I was yelling at her, but it was born of a furious, frustrated pity. She was a victim of his, yes, but she was also her own jailer. I didn't wait for a response. I turned on my heel, grabbed a stunned Kieran's hand and marched away, leaving them in the devastating wake of their own tragedy. Back at home, Kieran, worried the encounter had soured my mood, suggested a honeymoon. Somewhere sunny, where there are no memories of any of this. I agreed instantly. "Yes. Please. Let's just go." A week later we were on a beach in Maui. The sand was white, the water was turquoise, and the air was warm and clean. Kieran was on his knees, digging in the sand like a little kid, looking for the perfect seashell to bring home. Watching him, his face alight with simple joy, I knew it was time. The last secret had to be told. "Kieran," I said softly. He looked up, a beautiful spiral shell in his hand. "Yeah, my love." I took a deep breath. "That day with your friends, when you were 19, you said you only saw me as a sister. That you could never see me as anything more." The smile vanished from his face. The shell dropped from his hand, forgotten in the sand. He slowly got to his feet, his expression one of utter shock. "What?" he breathed. "What did you say?" Kieran stood frozen on the beach, the sound of the waves crashing seeming to fade into a dull roar. He stared at me, his face pale beneath his tan. "What did you just say?" he repeated, his voice barely a whisper. The old hurt, carefully buried for years, rose to the surface. "The winter break of your freshman year," I said, my voice surprisingly steady. "You were home from college. You had a bunch of friends over to your house. I was next door, but I came over to get a book I'd lent you. I heard you. Through the window. Your friend Mark asked if you had a thing for me. And you laughed. You said, 'Maya? Don't be ridiculous. She's like my sister.' I could never see her that way." I wrapped my arms around myself, suddenly cold despite the tropical sun. "That's why I fought with my parents. That's why I refused to go to the university they picked. I couldn't stay here next door to you knowing that's how you felt. I had to get away. So I ran to the city and I met Leo." Kieran was shaking his head slowly, a look of dawning horror and understanding on his face. "No," he murmured. "No, Maya. That's not what happened." He took a step toward me, his hands coming up as if to grasp something intangible. "Your parents, they were at my house that night. They were in the next room with my parents. Mark asked me that question and I panicked. I was 19. I was crazy about you, but you were still in high school. You were their daughter. If they had any idea, if they thought I was preying on you, they would have forbidden me from seeing you. They wouldn't have let me tutor you in math anymore. I wouldn't have been able to see you every day. So I lied. I gave the most brotherly, platonic answer I could possibly think of." The world tilted on its axis. All these years. All the pain, the rebellion, the terrible choices I'd made. They were built on a misunderstanding. A stupid, panicked lie from a teenage boy terrified of losing the girl he loved. You were crazy about me?" I whispered, the words feeling foreign on my tongue. He let out a choked sound, half laugh, half sob. "Are you kidding me? Maya, I've been in love with you since I was 15 years old. I was just waiting for you to grow up. Thought you knew. I thought I was being obvious. I thought of all the time we'd spent together. The way he'd always seek me out. The way he'd get annoyed when I dated other guys in high school. I'd written it off as brotherly protectiveness. I didn't know," I said, my voice small. "I thought you rejected me." He closed the distance between us in 2 long strides, his hands coming up to cradle my face. His eyes were bright with unshed tears. "I have spent every day since you left for the city regretting that stupid offhand comment. I thought you left because you felt nothing for me. I thought I'd missed my chance forever. When you asked me to marry you at your wedding, it was the most shocking, terrifying, glorious moment of my life." Tears finally spilled down my cheeks. The years of misunderstanding, of crossed signals and separate heartaches, rose up and then dissolved between us. He leaned his forehead against mine. "I'm so sorry," he breathed. "I'm so sorry I was an idiot. I'm so sorry you heard that. I'm so sorry you were alone because of me." I shook my head, wiping my tears on his shirt. "It's okay," I whispered. "We were just kids. We weren't wrong. We were just on different pages." He pulled back, a slow, beautiful smile spreading across his face. He brushed a tear from my cheek with his thumb. "Audrey," he said, using my first name, the one only my family used, with a tenderness that made my heart ache. "It's okay. Look, the path was messy. But the destination is perfect. What matters is that we're here now." He was right. The heartache, the betrayal with Leo, it had all led me back here to him. I buried my face in his chest and he held me tightly as the sun began to set over the Pacific, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple. The honeymoon was meant to last a month, but it was cut short. About 2 weeks in, I started feeling nauseous. Not just morning sickness, but all-day overwhelming exhaustion. A doctor on the island confirmed it within minutes. I was pregnant. We flew home the next day, both of us thrilled and terrified, and huddled together on the plane, making plans and whispering names. When we arrived back at our apartment, the security guard in the lobby stopped us. "Mr. Walker? A package came for you a few weeks ago." A gentleman dropped it off. Tall, slender fellow. Looked a bit rough. He handed us a flat, rectangular cardboard box. My heart sank. I knew who it was from before we even opened it. Checking the security monitor, the guard confirmed it. Leo. Inside the box, carefully wrapped in layers of bubble wrap, was a painting. Not a digital print, but a real, honest-to-God oil painting. It was of me sitting on the window seat in my old apartment reading a book. The light was soft, catching my profile. It was breathtakingly beautiful, and it was painted with a skill and tenderness I didn't know Leo possessed. In the corner next to his signature were 2 words, "I'm sorry." I stared at it, a tumult of emotions warring inside me. Anger, pity, a faint, residual sadness for what could have been. Kieran's expression was tense, his jaw tight as he looked at the painting. "What do you want to do with it?" he asked, his voice neutral. I didn't hesitate. I didn't want this ghost in our home, this reminder of a painful past, especially now with our future growing inside me. "Burn it," I said, my voice firm. "I want our child to be surrounded by light and love, not the shadows of someone like him." Kieran's shoulders relaxed in clear relief. "Consider it done." He took the box and left immediately to deal with it. I stood alone in the quiet apartment for a moment, then picked up my phone. I called a local florist and ordered a simple, elegant bouquet of white lilies. "Please deliver them to Green Lawn Cemetery," I said. "For Cassandra Rossi's grave." It was a small, futile gesture. A nod to the tragedy of her life. A life so consumed by a toxic love that it ultimately destroyed her. It was the only thing I felt I could do. Later that evening, as Kieran and I were curled up on the sofa, he told me the rest of the story. The story I hadn't asked for but needed to hear. "Leo went to prison, Maya," he said quietly, stroking my hair. I looked up, surprised. "Prison? For the fire?" "No. For Cassandra." He took a deep breath. After the scene at the hospital, she refused to get the abortion. She also drained what little money he had left from his company's accounts. She was trying to run away to have the baby on her own. He found out. He caught up to her at the airport, and he ran her down with his car. A cold chill ran through me. By God. She and the baby died instantly. He was charged with vehicular manslaughter, but the prosecution argued it was intentional. He's serving a 15-year sentence. I was silent, digesting the horrific end to their twisted story. The painting, his apology, it made a terrible kind of sense now. It was his final, futile attempt at penance from behind bars. "The painting," Kieran started. "I don't want to talk about the painting anymore," I interrupted, snuggling closer to him. I placed his hand on my still flat stomach. "Let's talk about this. Let's talk about us." He smiled, a real joyful smile that reached his eyes, and leaned down to kiss me. "Okay," he whispered against my lips. "Let's talk about us." And we did. We talked about nurseries and names and the future, until the shadows of the past finally receded, leaving only the bright, certain promise of what was to come. The news of Leo's imprisonment was a dark, distant rumble of thunder from a storm that had already passed over my life. I felt a profound, unsettling quiet in its wake. There was no satisfaction, only a hollowed-out sense of tragedy for the lives ruined, Cassandra's, her child's, and even in a way Leo's. The man I'd once loved was gone, replaced by a monster of his own making, and now he was locked away. Kieran held me that night as I processed it all. He didn't offer platitudes or try to minimize it. He just let me feel the weight of it, his presence a steady, warm constant against the chill of the news. "It's over, Maya," he murmured into my hair. "It's truly over now." And he was right. With Leo behind bars, the last lingering thread of fear, the fear of him reappearing, of him trying to wield some remaining scrap of power over me, snapped. The painting was ash. The threat was nullified. The chapter was closed. My focus sharpened with a new, fierce intensity. It was no longer on the past but on the swelling present. My pregnancy became my entire world. The nausea was relentless, the exhaustion profound, but every flutter, every tiny kick, was a miracle that eclipsed the discomfort. Kieran was a transformed man. The playful, sometimes smug charmer was now a panicky, over-attentive bodyguard. He researched prenatal nutrition with the focus of a scholar, banished my favorite soft cheeses from the house, and installed nightlights every 3 feet between our bedroom and the bathroom. "I just don't want you to trip," he'd say, his brow furrowed with concern as I laughed at him. "Kieran, I'm pregnant, not blind. Humor me," he'd plead, and I always did, my heart swelling with a love so vast it felt like it might break me. We decided to find out the gender. The ultrasound appointment was a spectacle. My parents and Kieran's parents crowded into the small room, a united front of eager grandparents. The tech moved the wand over my gel-slicked belly, and there it was, the grainy black and white image of our baby, a perfect tiny human sucking its thumb. "Well," the tech said, smiling. "Would you like to know?" "Yes," everyone chorused, Kieran squeezing my hand so tightly I thought he might break it. "It's a girl." The room erupted. My mother burst into happy tears. Kieran's father clapped his son on the back so hard he stumbled. But Kieran just stared at the screen, his eyes glistening. He leaned down and pressed his lips to my forehead. "A daughter," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. "We're having a daughter." That night we lay in bed, his hand resting on my stomach where our daughter was performing what felt like a gymnastics routine. "Lily," I said softly. He turned his head on the pillow to look at me. "What?" "Lily. For my grandmother. And because they're strong. They push through the earth after a long winter and bloom no matter what." He was silent for a moment, then he smiled, a slow, beautiful smile. "Lily Walker. It's perfect." With the future so brightly defined, the past began to feel like a story I'd read long ago. Its emotional potency faded. I started to engage with my family's world again, not as a rebel but as an heiress coming into her own. I began working part-time with my Uncle Arthur, my business degree and hard-won experience from building Leo's company finally being put to use for my own legacy. It was during this time that a box arrived at my office. It was plain brown with no return address. My assistant brought it in looking curious. "This just came for you, Ms. Walker." Hand-delivered, no note. A prickle of unease ran down my spine. I waited until she left before opening it. Inside, nestled in tissue paper, was a small, exquisitely carved wooden music box. There was a note card tucked under the lid. "Maya, I heard your news. Congratulations. I know my words mean less than nothing, but I am truly happy for you. I am in a therapy program here. They make us confront the damage we've done. This was my mother's. It's the only thing I have that was ever truly good. I want your daughter to have it. Please don't see it as a request for forgiveness. It's not. It's just an acknowledgement. A wish for her to have a better story." My hands trembled. It was from Leo. From prison. How had he heard? Why was he doing this? I stared at the music box. It was old, the wood dark and smooth with age. I lifted the lid. A tiny, tinkling melody began to play, a sweet, sad lullaby. It was beautiful. And it felt like a grenade wrapped in silk. I didn't know what to do. Throwing it away felt cruel, and despite everything I didn't want to be cruel. Keeping it felt like inviting a ghost into my daughter's nursery. I closed the lid and put the box back in its packaging, my mind racing. That evening I showed it to Kieran. His face darkened immediately, a protective storm cloud gathering in his eyes. "Absolutely not," he said, his voice firm. "He doesn't get to do this. He doesn't get to send gifts to our daughter. I'll have my lawyer contact the warden. This is a violation." "Wait," I said, placing a hand on his arm. "Just wait." I picked up the note and read it again. "They make us confront the damage we've done. An acknowledgement." "What if it's real, Kieran?" I asked quietly. "What if this is the first genuine, selfless thing he's ever tried to do?" "I don't care if it's real," Kieran said, his jaw tight. "His genuine doesn't get to touch our family. Not ever again." I understood his fury, his protectiveness. But something in the note, in the offering of his mother's only treasure, felt different from the threatening painting. This felt like surrender. "I'm not going to give it to Lily," I said finally. "But I'm not going to throw it away either. I'm going to put it away. In a box in the attic. And one day, a long, long time from now, when she's old enough to understand the whole story, I'll show it to her. I'll let her decide what it means." Kieran looked at me for a long time, the anger slowly fading from his eyes, replaced by a deep respect. He pulled me into a hug, careful of my belly. You have a far more generous heart than I do, Maya Walker. It's not generosity, I said, resting my head on his chest. It's closure. This is me truly letting go. This is me accepting his apology, not for him but for me. So I can move on without any more weight. I put the music box in a storage container the next day, and with it I felt the very last shadow of Leo Vasallo finally lift. The months flew by. My belly grew and our apartment slowly transformed into a nursery. Kieran painted the walls a soft, buttery yellow and assembled a crib with a concentration usually reserved for defusing bombs. My parents were over constantly, my mother fussing over me, my father already buying out entire sections of the toy store. The rift between us was not just healed. It was forgotten, replaced by the joyful anticipation of a new generation. The baby shower was a lavish affair hosted by my mother at the family estate. All the women from my old life and my new life were there, a blending of worlds that felt seamless and right. Kieran's mother presented me with a quilt she'd been sewing since the day we announced the pregnancy, each stitch a testament of love. As I sat there, surrounded by laughter and gifts and the incredible love of my family and friends, I felt a sense of peace so complete it was dizzying. I had run from this world thinking it was a gilded cage. But I had been wrong. It was a foundation. A network of strength and love that had been waiting for me to come home and claim it. Later, as the party wound down, Kieran sneaked in, unable to stay away. He made a beeline for me, ignoring the good-natured teasing from the guests, and knelt beside my chair, his hand going to my stomach. "How's my girl?" he asked, his voice soft. "We're good," I said, covering his hand with mine. "Tired, but good." He looked around at the remnants of the party, at the smiling faces of our families, and then back at me, his eyes shining. "We're really doing this, aren't we?" I leaned down and kissed him, a slow, sweet promise. "We really are." The final month of my pregnancy was a lesson in patience. I was enormous, uncomfortable, and so eager to meet my daughter I could barely think straight. Kieran worked from home, his desk moved into the living room so he could be near me every second. One evening, as we were watching a movie, a sharp, tightening pain gripped my abdomen. It was different from the practice Braxton Hicks contractions I'd been having. This was deep and insistent. I gasped, my hand flying to my belly. Kieran was on his feet instantly, the remote clattering to the floor. "Now. Is it now?" Another pain came, stronger this time, and I nodded, my breath catching. "I think so." What followed was a whirlwind of controlled chaos. Kieran, who had rehearsed this moment 100 times, became a monument of efficiency. He grabbed the hospital bag, called our parents, helped me to the car, all with a calm demeanor that completely belied the panic in his eyes. At the hospital things progressed quickly. The pains were coming hard and fast. Kieran never left my side, his hand a constant anchor, his voice a steady murmur of encouragement in my ear. He wiped my forehead with a cool cloth, fed me ice chips, and glared at any nurse who he thought wasn't being attentive enough. When it was finally time to push, the world narrowed to the small, bright delivery room. My mother was on one side of me, Kieran on the other. With one final, monumental effort, a tiny, furious cry split the air. They placed her on my chest immediately, a tiny, red, perfect being with a shock of dark hair in Kieran's eyes. He was real. She was here. I looked up at Kieran. Tears were streaming down his face, unchecked. He was looking at our daughter with a look of such awe, such pure, unadulterated love, that it stole the air from my lungs. "Lily," he whispered, his voice cracking as he reached out a trembling finger to stroke her cheek. "Hi, Lily. I'm your daddy." In that moment, surrounded by the love that had always been there, holding the love we had created, I knew that every wrong turn, every heartbreak, every moment of pain had been worth it. It had all led me here. To this. To her. To us. The first few weeks of Lily's life were a beautiful, sleep-deprived blur. We existed in a cozy, milky bubble, our world reduced to the four walls of our apartment and the tiny human who ruled it with an iron fist and a devastating gummy smile. Kieran was a natural father. His earlier panic transformed into a confident, gentle competence. He changed diapers with the focus of a bomb disposal expert, mastered the art of swaddling, and would spend hours just walking Lily around the apartment, whispering stories about the stars to her when she was fussy. I watched them sometimes, my heart so full it felt like it might burst. This was the man I'd loved since I was a girl. This was the father of my child. The journey had been circuitous and painful, but the destination was more perfect than I could ever have imagined. One afternoon as Lily slept in my arms, my phone buzzed. It was a news alert. I almost ignored it, but the headline caught my eye. Disgraced Texio Leo Vassallo denied parole. I felt a familiar, faint chill, but it was distant, like hearing about a storm in another country. I read the short article. The parole board had cited a lack of genuine remorse and the severity of his crime. He would serve at least 5 more years. I put the phone down and looked at my daughter's peaceful face. I felt no triumph, no schadenfreude. Only a quiet, profound sadness for the wasted life, for the path of destruction he had chosen. I hoped for his sake that his therapy was real. I hoped he could find some peace far away from me and my family. He was a footnote now. A cautionary tale. My life was here in this sunlit room with my daughter's breath soft against my neck. When Lily was 3 months old, we had her christening. It was a small, intimate ceremony in the old stone church in Fairhaven where generations of my family had been baptized. She wore the same gossamer thin christening gown I had worn, and she didn't cry once, just stared up at the priest with Kieran's serious, curious eyes. Afterward, we had a luncheon in my parents' garden. It was a perfect spring day. The air was warm, the roses were in full, extravagant bloom, and Lily was passed from adoring relative to adoring relative, lapping up the attention. Kieran found me leaning against an old oak tree watching the scene. He slipped his arm around my waist, pulling me close. "Happy?" he asked, nuzzling my hair. "So happy it almost hurts," I replied, leaning into him. He was quiet for a moment, watching our mother's coo over Lily. "You know," he said, his voice thoughtful, "I used to be so angry about the years we lost. The years with Leo. I felt like he stole them from us." I looked up at him. "And now?" He smiled down at me, a soft, understanding smile. "Now I think they were necessary. You had to become who you are. And I had to become who I am. We wouldn't be us right here, right now if we'd gotten together at 19. We'd be different people. And I like these people. I love this us." Tears pricked my eyes. He was right. The heartbreak had tempered me. The betrayal had taught me my own strength. And the years of waiting had made Kieran into this incredible, patient, steadfast man. "I love this us too," I whispered. Later that evening, after everyone had left and Lily was finally asleep in her crib, Kieran led me out into the garden. The fairy lights were still twinkling in the trees, and the scent of night-blooming jasmine hung heavy in the air. He stopped in the middle of the lawn and turned to me, taking both my hands in his. His expression was suddenly nervous. "Hiya," he began, his voice slightly rough. "We got married in a whirlwind. It was the best, most impulsive decision of my life. But we did it backwards. I never got to do this properly." He dropped to one knee. My breath hitched. "Kieran, what are you doing? We're already married." He grinned, that boyish, heart-stopping grin. "Humor me." He pulled a small velvet box from his pocket. Inside wasn't a new ring, but my wedding band, the one he'd slid onto my finger at our chaotic first wedding. He'd had it engraved. On the inside, in delicate script, were 3 words. "My first love." "Hiya," he said, his eyes gleaming in the moonlight. "You have been my best friend, my worst enemy, my greatest heartache, and my only dream since I was 15 years old. I loved you when I thought I'd lost you forever. I loved you when you loved someone else. And I will love you long after we're both gone. You are my past, my present, and my entire future. Will you do me the incredible honor of marrying me? Properly, fully, for the rest of our lives." I was crying, laughing, pulling him to his feet and kissing him. "Yes, you ridiculous, wonderful man. Yes, of course I'll marry you. Again." He slid the ring back onto my finger and it felt like a new promise, a deeper vow. We were choosing each other again, with full knowledge, with clear eyes, and with a love that had been tested and had emerged unbreakable. We were married again a year later on a sun-drenched beach in Maui, exactly where he'd proposed. This time it was just us, our parents, and Lily, who toddled down the aisle as the flower girl, scattering petals with serious determination before abandoning her basket to chase a crab. I wore a simple silk slip dress. Kieran wore linen. We wrote our own vows, speaking of second chances, of friendship, of the patient, enduring love that had waited for us to finally find our way. As the minister pronounced us husband and wife, again, Kieran leaned in and kissed me, a kiss that held the memory of every lost year and the promise of every year to come. I told you, he whispered against my lips. Everyone ends up with their first love. I laughed, resting my forehead against his. Took you long enough to catch up. He smiled, his eyes fixed on mine. I'd wait 100 more years for you, Maya Walker. You were always worth the wait. We turned to face our family. My parents were beaming, their arms around each other. Kieran's parents were wiping away tears. And Lily, our perfect, beautiful daughter, was sitting in the sand, clapping her chubby hands with delight, surrounded by the petals she had thrown. She was the bloom after the long winter. She was our fresh start. She was our proof that from even the most broken, painful past, something beautiful and strong and new could grow. Kieran took my hand and together we walked down the aisle, not away from our past, but forward into our future, ready for whatever came next because we would face it together. Finally, the end.